Welcome to this deep dive. We take these complex topics and try to pull out the bits that, really matter.
Yeah, make them a bit more digestible.
Exactly. So today we're looking at something that touches almost everyone's finances. Tax deducted at source. TDS. We've got this document you shared outlining some pretty important shifts in the rules looking at the financial year 2024-25 versus 25-26.
That's right. And we're going to try and make sense of it.
So first off, maybe just a super quick reminder, TDS.
Right. So TDS is basically tax that gets taken out right when you earn the income at the source.
Before it even hits your bank account, usually.
Exactly. So instead of one big tax bill later, you're kind of paying bits throughout the year.
Okay. And this document, it lays out changes to the thresholds, like when TDS kicks in, and the rates, too.
Precisely. Thresholds and rates for different kinds of income. And our mission here really is just to flag the key changes for listeners.
Yeah, highlight what's new, what it means, and hopefully avoid drowning everyone in tax jargon.
Let's try. So where should we start? Maybe salaries. Section 192.
Good place. Lots of people affected by that.
Well, the main thing to note here is actually no change.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the TDS on your salary, it's still going to be based on the income tax slab rates that apply to you. So same as before.
Right. Business as usual for salary TDS calculation. Okay. What about EPF, premature withdrawals? That's section 192A.
Right. Also, staying consistent here, the threshold is still 50,000 rupees.
Meaning if you withdraw less than that, no TDS.
Correct. And if you withdraw more, the TDS rate is still 10%. No change there either.
Okay. Steady on that front. And interest from securities, section 193.
Same story. Threshold remains 10,000 rupees. TDS rate stays at 10%.
Okay. So the first two are pretty stable.
Seems so. But now we get to section 194, dividends. Here we do see a change. Okay. What's happening with dividends? The threshold's going up. It was 5,000 rupees, now it's 10,000.
Doubled.
Yeah. The TDS rate itself is still 10% though.
So break that down. If I get dividends from a company.
Well, TDS will only be deducted now if the total dividends from that company in the financial year go over 10,000 rupees.
Instead of 5,000 before. So less chance of TDS being cut on smaller dividend payments.
Exactly. Probably helps reduce the compliance hassle for smaller payouts, a bit more cash flow up front for the investor too.
Makes sense. Okay, what about interest from banks? Section 194A, I heard there were changes here too.
Yes, quite significant ones actually, especially for seniors.
Okay.
So for everyone, the threshold's up from 40,000 to 50,000 rupees.
Right, a decent bump.
But for senior citizens, it's jumped from 50,000 all the way to 100,000, a lakh.
Wow, doubled for seniors.
Yeah, it's a big increase. The TDS rate stays at 10% for both groups, but that threshold change is major.
So seniors earning interest, say, from fixed deposits, they'll see less TDS deducted unless their interest income from a single bank crosses that 1 lakh mark per year.
Precisely. It's likely a move to give seniors who often rely on interest income a bit more financial breathing room.
And that's per bank, right? If you have FDs in multiple banks.
Good point, yes. That threshold applies separately to each bank, each institution.
Okay. And still within 1994A, what about interest from other sources, not securities or banks?
That threshold is also increasing. From 5,000 to 10,000 rupees, rate stays at 10%.
Okay, another increase there. Now let's switch gears to winnings. Lotteries, section 194B.
Right. Here the change isn't the rate, which stays at 30%, but how the threshold applies.
How so?
It used to be 10,000 rupees in aggregate winnings for the year. Now it's 10,000 rupees per transaction.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I get this. So if I won, say, 8,000 once and 9,000 later, under the old rules, the total is 17,000, so TDS would apply on that second win, right?
Correct, because you cross the aggregate 10,000.
But now, since neither win itself is over 10,000, no TDS would be cut.
Exactly. But if you won, say, 12,000 in one go,
then bang, 30% TDS comes off that 12,000 right away.
You got it. It focuses on each individual win amount now.
Interesting. What about online gaming winnings? Section 194BA.
No change there. Still no threshold, still 30% TDS on any amount won.
Okay. And horse racing, section 194BB.
Same change as lotteries. The 10,000 rupee threshold is now per win, per race, effectively, not aggregate. Rate's still 30%.
So a consistent approach for lottery and horse race winnings, then tax the bigger individual wins as they happen.
Seems to be the logic, yes.
All right. Moving on. Payments to contractors, section 194C. Any changes?
Nope. Thresholds remain 30,000 single payment or 1 lakh aggregate for the year.
And the rates, 1% for individuals, HUFs, 2% for others.
Still the same. No changes for contractor payments.
Okay. But commissions, I think there were changes. Insurance commission, section 194D.
Yes, definitely some movement here. The threshold goes up from 15,000 to 20,000.
Okay, a bit higher.
But the big news is the rate for individuals and HUFs, it's dropped significantly.
How much?
From 5% down to 2%.
Wow, that's quite a cut.
It is. For companies receiving insurance commission, the rate stays at 10%. But for individual agents or HUFs, that's a big reduction in upfront tax.
Yeah, that could make a noticeable difference to their take-home pay during the year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we see a similar pattern with payments from life insurance policies. Section 194DA.
Okay.
The threshold stays at 1 lakh rupees, but the TDS rate also cut from 5% down to 2%.
Another drop to 2%. It does seem like a trend, reducing rates for certain payments, especially for individuals.
It does, and it continues with general commission or brokerage under Section 194H.
What's happening there?
Threshold up again from 15,000 to 20,000, and the rate is now simplified to a flat 2%.
Simplified. What was it before?
It could be 5% or 2%, depending on the specifics. Now, just 2% across the board for this section.
So higher threshold, simpler, lower rate. Sounds like good news for those earning commission or brokerage income.
Generally, yes. Less TDS up front. Now, this next one is potentially a biggie. Rent, Section 19040I.
Rent for land, buildings, plant, machinery. What's the change?
The threshold calculation has fundamentally changed. It used to be an annual threshold of 2,40,000 rupees.
Right.
Now it's a monthly threshold of 50,000 rupees.
Whoa, okay, hold on. Monthly.
Yes. The TDS rates are the same 10% for land building rent, 2% for plant machinery, but the trigger point is now monthly.
Okay, let's unpack that. So if I pay, say, 40,000 a month rent, that's 480 a year. Under the old rules, TDS applied.
Correct.
Under the new rules, since 40,000 is less than the monthly 50,000 limit, no TDS.
Wait, no, other way around. If you pay over 50,000 in any month, TDS applies for that month. If you pay 40,000 per month consistently, you never cross the 50,000 monthly threshold.
Okay, I see. So if my rent is, say, 60,000 a month,
Then TDS applies every month because you're over the 50,000 monthly limit.
even if my total annual rent was hypothetically below the old 240 limit, though that's unlikely at 60 kilo a month.
The annual limit is gone for this section. It's all about hitting that 50,000 in a single month now.
So this could bring a lot more tenancies into the TDS net, especially in cities with high rents. If rent crosses 50K even for 1 month.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
If the rent is 50,000 or more per month, the tenant has to deduct TDS. It requires more vigilance from both tenants paying that much and landlords receiving it.
Right, that's a significant shift.
Yeah.
Okay, what about selling property, non-agricultural land? Section 194IA.
No changes there. Threshold is still 50 lakhs or 5 million rupees, and the TDS rate remains 1%.
Okay, and what about rent paid by individuals or HUF who weren't covered by that main rent section, Section 194ID?
Right, this is typically for individuals, HUFs, paying rent over 50,000 a month, but maybe not having a business requiring TAN, etc. The threshold stays at 50,000 per month.
But the rate,
That's been simplified. It used to be 5% or sometimes 2%. Now it's a uniform 2%.
another simplification to 2%. Okay.
Moving on, professional fees. Section 194J.
Like payments to doctors, lawyers, consultants.
Exactly. The threshold here has increased from 30,000 to 50,000 rupees.
So a higher buffer before TDS applies.
Yes. The rate stays at 10% though.
Got it. And mutual fund dividends, Section 194K.
That follows the same pattern as direct dividends under 194. Threshold up from 5,000 to 10,000 rupees. Rate still 10%.
Consistent there. Okay. What about compensation for compulsory acquisition? Like if the government acquires your land, Section 194LA.
Big change here. The threshold has been significantly increased.
How much?
From 2,50,000 rupees up to 5 lakh rupees.
Wow, doubled again.
Yes, the TDS rate is still 10%, but that higher threshold means a much larger chunk of compensation could be received without TDS being cut immediately. That's quite a relief for affected landowners.
Certainly sounds like it.
Then there's Section 194M. This covers certain payments like contractor fees, commission, professional fees made by individuals or HUFs who aren't covered under the main sections 194C, J, or H. Usually high-value payments.
Okay, what's changing there?
The threshold remains high, an aggregate of 50 lakh rupees, 5 million in a year. But the TDS rate is simplified again.
Let me guess. 2%.
You got it. Down from potentially 5% before, now it's a uniform 2%.
Seeing that pattern quite clearly now, simplification and often reduction, especially involving individuals' HUFs.
It seems to be a theme. Now, quickly, a few areas with no changes. Purchase of goods, Section 194Q. Threshold 50 lakhs, rate 0.1%. Stays the same.
Okay.
Perquisites for business or profession, Section 194 Air. Threshold 20,000, rate 10%. Same.
Right.
And payments for transferring virtual digital assets, VDAs, like crypto, Section 194S. Thresholds, 50,000 for specified persons, 10,000 for others, and the 1% rate are all unchanged.
Okay, so stability in those areas. But wasn't there something completely new?
Ah, yes. Very important. For the financial year 2025-26, there's a brand new section being introduced, Section 194T.
T? What does that cover?
It covers payments made to partners of firms and limited liability partnerships, LLPs.
Payments to partners, like beyond their salary or interest.
Exactly. It seems aimed at things like share of profits or other remuneration paid by the firm LLP to its partners. The threshold is 20,000 rupees, and the TDS rate is 10%.
So firms and LLPs will now need to deduct TDS on these kinds of payments to their partners if they cross 20,000.
That's how it reads. It's a significant new compliance point for partnerships and LLPs starting from FY 25-26.
Right, that's definitely one to watch for businesses structured that way. Okay, wow, that was a lot. Let's try to quickly recap the main takeaways.
Sure, so big threshold increases for dividends and especially bank interest for senior citizens.
Right, that 1 lakh limit for seniors. And the change for lottery and horse racing winnings now per transaction, not aggregate.
Correct. Then lower TDS rates, often down to 2%, for insurance commission, individuals' HUFs, life insurance payouts, and general commission brokerage under and under 94H.
And that major shift for rent under 94I moving to a monthly 50,000 threshold.
Yes, that's key. Also, the big jump in the threshold for compensation on compulsory land acquisition up to 5 lakhs.
And we saw simplification, often to 2%, for rent under 94AB and those high-value payments under 194M by individuals' HUFs.
And don't forget the brand new Section 194T for payments to partners starting FY 25-26.
Phew. Okay, so these changes, they really could affect your bottom line depending on where your income comes from.
Absolutely. It's worth looking at your own income streams, interest, dividends, rent, professional fees, whatever applies, and seeing how these new rules might impact the tax deducted upfront. It helps with planning.
Definitely. You know, stepping back, looking at all these tweaks, the rate reductions, the threshold shifts, this new section, it does make you wonder about the bigger picture.
Like the government strategy.
Yeah, how they're fine-tuning tax collection, maybe trying to simplify in some areas, target others more specifically. What are the wider ripple effects going to be for different sectors or just for us as taxpayers in the next financial year?
It's an interesting question. These aren't just numbers. They reflect policy choices and could shift behaviors. It's definitely something to mull over.
Food for thought indeed. And obviously we've covered a lot, but if a particular section really jumped out at you because it affects your situation.
Yeah, it might be worth digging into that specific section a bit more, or, having a chat with a tax advisor to get personalized guidance based on your circumstances.